We've been deeply engaged in translating this chapter out of The Mind of the Machine. And that's what we want to talk a bit about. But before that, I want to lay out a few... I want to talk about your edifice, because I don't think people are really aware of this edifice and how it's developed over time. It starts with a little article called Digital Metaphysics in 1988. And it's the first thing you write, and you're calling yourself an electric author, which is interesting in of itself. And then there's this other article that comes a little later in 1990 called The Universal Machine, which is really the foundation of everything that comes after it. And then there's The Metamorphosis of Space and Time in 1994, which talks about space and time and the Kantian and what's behind Kant. And then we get to Vom Geister Machine in 1999, which is where the chapter that we're talking about today comes from. And it's followed by this other work called The Shame of the Philosopher in 2006, which you can see how that feeds right off of this chapter, how this develops. And then The Philosophy of the Machine in 2018. So today we're going to talk about In the Labyrinth of the Signs. And it's the second chapter of the 1999 work, The Mind of the Machine. And after being so deeply immersed in it, I'm convinced that it's really the entrance into the Burkhardian thought labyrinth, because it captures just how the universal machine and the metamorphosis of space and time take your thinking a further step in the direction of the social drive. In a sense, it's, as you tell me, a deep detective story.
And I'm forced to go back 30 years. So, like childhood crimes, it was a, how should I put it? Like, I wrote like The Universal Machine when my son was born, like in 1990. So, and like I had the feeling, so it was a little bit time consuming, like to have a child. So, and I had the feeling I have to make up certain ideas, like I have to make up like my mind a bit. And I knew so my social life would be a little bit reduced. So I got it to thinking, like, and I read like Kant these days and was really flabbergasted, because like Kant is getting this a priori, he's getting this wonderful idea that whatever we like get out of nature, we have laid in beforehand, like time, space, motion, like the a priori. And I was wondering, because I've been confronted with a computer in my daily work, like working in the sound studio, I knew, so my ideas about time, space, and motion were really like changed, like by the computer space I was in. And I was wondering, why did Kant not even get that like a time has also like a history? For example, you could go back to the mechanical clock. So that was the way back to the Metamorphosen. And this was a weird story, because it led me into certain intellectual deserts, I would say. Everybody taking for granted like that we have like the mechanical worldview from the 17th century, Cartesian worldview, and so forth. But nobody like takes into account, or just a few take into account, that the mechanical clock is a product of the 12th century. So Descartes is 5 centuries late, which is like a big riddle. And then you ask yourself why. And then you get into the material, and the material stuff tells you like a lot of like unforeseen elements. And then you all of a sudden realize, okay, this intellectual history is a little bit different than the way the philosophers tell us. Personally, I never understood myself like to a very long time as a philosopher. I was just like looking for answers, like a child asking child's question. I was interested. So, what is the beginning of like the time and space thing, like Kant is writing on? But this led me to this deeper question: even what is a machine? So, and then you get into real trouble. It's compared to like because mechane is betrayal of nature, and the Greeks had no like engineer-like machines, so they had like this Deus ex machina. That was all. And then you ask yourself, so what is it? What is a machine? So that was the beginning of my detective story. Look for the machine.
And the machine is not what we think it is. It is a very strange question, is it not?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's not a device. Or if it is a device, It's a metaphysical device.
And also like a moral device. For example, like that's what like in our conversations we like always come to the moment when we talk about like the machine and somebody says, okay, I'm dealing with ethics, so I'm not dealing with like this lower stuff, etc. like this. But the thing is like you take something like tactfulness and punctuality, and you see right away like these are outcomes of the mechanical clock. So in a way, like the moral machine is kind of interjected. So it doesn't make sense. It doesn't even make sense like to separate technology and like morals, I would say.
And there's this lovely incident, where you're standing at this university library parking lot. You've been in the library all day long, and you've been researching, and you find this book, and you're thinking about it. You're fiddling with your car keys in your pocket, and suddenly, in the blink of an eye, your gaze falls on this borrowed book. It's called Sign and Design, the Psychogenetic Sources of the Alphabet. And suddenly you realize that the letter A used to be the picture of a bull. And at that moment, the State Library rises behind you, and it disappears into a sky with two suns. Besides this beautiful piece of writing, it captures this moment of what? It's just gorgeous. Tell us more.
I mean, that's really true. So I was standing on the parking lot, had like this book in my hand, and like I was looking for my key, and it just like, because I love this title, The Psychogenetic Source of the Alphabet. I knew like this pundit was almost unknown. I couldn't find any information on this guy, Alfred Kallier. He's just written this very book. And I saw right away, like on this parking lot, I saw like these inverted Aleph sign and realized it's a picture. It's depicting a bull. And that left me speechless, because I said, like, why did I study philosophy and like learned about semiotics and learned about the arbitrary signs, etc., and couldn't see what a child could see? Yeah, the weird feeling was really being lost, being completely lost. So in a way, like the story on the parking lot is telling it all. In a way, like the library flies away, and then you stand there, like, and you've got like this little idea about the bull being like the prototype of the alphabetical sign, but there's no, I mean, or just little help from other academics, etc. I found like more or less nothing, etc. Besides Alfred Kallier writing about it, which is very weird, because on the other hand, I was deep in reading like Jacques Lacan. He was my beloved enemy, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he was talking always about the alphabet, like in French is even like more visible, alphabet, because like it's the alphabet, but he's just pronouncing it in a way that you hear the beast. I loved it, like so the alphabet, and then I saw the alphabet, like I saw it like in front of me, and I was wondering. So, and then the next question is, so how do you find out about the story of the alphabet? So, and I had like, as a little recipe or as a little template in front of me, my experience with the metamorphose. And this experience was kind of weird, because it told me, okay, there's something like a beginning which is a little bit different than like the classical story told by in the philosophical seminaries. So meaning it's beginning with the question of energy. So
yes,
and I had the feeling, so somehow the alphabet is nothing. It's not a child, like a philosophical childbirth, which is springing out of your head. There has to be like a background behind it. So it must be linked to social practices, so that everybody's accepting like this language. And I was looking for that, and there was no other like a source than the myth, and they were so rewarding. I have to admit.
Well, yeah, this is the sense of a detective story. And if I can be so bold here, as you're talking about this, there's two things here. One is, when I first read this, because, I mean, this is the third translation I've worked through on it, I said to you, I never understood semiotics until I read this. And you kind of laughed at me and said, well, it's because you didn't never have it right? So there's that part of it, which is interesting. And the other part of it is this notion of a simulacrum and the lost form, and the psychic economy, and how this alphabet, this Tupinrat, the cycling of letters that go round and round and round, is what holds us together in what we call the Great Miracle. And it's really the psychic economy of a psychotope that we're in.
Like the funny thing is we're running in circles. And if you take like a word like encyclopedia, okay? So encyclopedia means like the education of running in circles. So we're running in circles, but we're not really aware. Like for example, I was deep also like in reading of Luhmann, etc. And then Luhmann has a real problem in explaining what a system is. He has no idea. He says like it's not a poetic something, and he goes back to nature, etc. It's like a natural something. And I knew like this encyclopedia of the signs, like this type wheel, is not nature. Is something which is man-made. And I was really interested. I was like trying to find out. So what is the prehistory? And the only source you have are the myth. That's all you have, but the myths are so telling and so wonderfully, telling you all these stories. If you take them serious, that was the important thing: taking the myth serious, literal in a way.
Maybe you can run us through a few of these myths, how they kind of come together. They become a coherent whole, because we tend to just count it as a whole myth. But it's always these little parts of things, but yet they add up to something.
If you get like this little detective story, right? Like, and you look, and the first thing is like your message is look for the bull. So and all of a sudden you go to the myth.
Yeah.
And the bull is everywhere. For example, you hear the story, okay? Like Zeus camouflaged himself as a bull, and like he abducted Europa to Crete, and Europa never comes gets home at Europe. She stays at Crete, which is exactly like the history, which is playing out. And so there's the bull, and then you hear the king of Crete, Minos, sees one day a wonderful white bull appearing at the shore. And he falls in love with this bull. Better said, with the beauty. He says this bull is destined to be like a sacrifice for the god. No, I don't do that. So he kind of prevents the sacrifice to happen, etc. And all of a sudden, there's some and then you read anthropological literature and you see there have been strange rites in Crete taking place, jumping over a bull, young men doing that. And you see it's playing out. And then you read in the myth that this Minos has a problem. His problem is after seeing the bull, betraying the gods, not nature, but betraying the gods with the giving of the sacrifice.
Rites is what he's betraying.
Yeah. And his own fertility is kind of damaged because it's just producing snakes and insects and the like. So it's a real humiliation. And this is really funny. All of a sudden, his wife being kind of not satisfied, etc., falls in love with this bull. But she's not able to get the attraction of the bull, etc. So she has to have help. So now comes the moment of Daedalus coming onto the scene, etc. And so he gets into it, and he creates this artificial bull, etc., which allows this insemination, this weird, mystical marriage of woman and bull.
Which can't happen.
And then all of a sudden, out of this relationship comes the Minotaur, the shame of the Minos, as he's called, which is for society a real problem because the beauty. The emergence of beauty, the white bull at the sea, all of a sudden, it's creating a chimera being, etc. This bull, with the head of a human being, etc. And he has to be kept in secret. So, which makes the story of the labyrinth. And I saw, just with this story, for example, somebody like Luhmann talking about nature and its autobiotic system. So he's losing himself in the labyrinth of the signs. He cannot explain what a labyrinth is. Everybody who comes up with the system, etc., has a certain problem, explaining how it comes into being. But this story tells you about a system. And then we hear about Daedalus. He constructs the labyrinth in a way that he doesn't even find his way out. So he has to get wings, etc. And you hear this story, and it's like an eye opener. I would say, you get it right away. You understand why a system comes into being, and the story tells it all. And I was, how shall I put it? I was so amazed that like intellectuals wouldn't take these myths really serious.